All right, we are back. We are on Unit 3. Sorry about the massive shadow on the paper here. That's just the document camera and the light. But we're going to go ahead and start with number 1. Excuse me. So when we state the zeros of the function, there are some quick and easy ways that we can do this. So I'm going to go ahead and pull my phone over. And basically, I'm going to first show you on Desmos, and then I'll confirm it by hand. So I'm going to do it a little bit backwards here. Well, here's my Desmos graphing calculator. When we talk about zeros, we need to remember there are other words for this. They could also be called roots, solutions, or they could be x-intercepts. I'm going to move the paper down so you can see what I wrote. There we go. So there are other words for zeros, roots, solutions, or x-intercepts. So when we graph these, we are going to look for where the graph touches the x-intercept. So we see 2 locations of this, -4 and +4. So first things first, I've got the answers -4 and +4 from the graph. All right, so yay. Now let's make sure I can do that by hand. To be a 0, that means that the equation was set equal to 0. So 0 equals 3x squared minus 48. So I'm going to solve for x. Add 48. And now I'm going to divide the 3. Sorry, I'm going to have to write over to the side here. 16 equals x squared. And then to solve for x, I'm going to take the square root. Now, when we take the square root, we have to write plus or minus in front because it could have been either positive or -4 squared, getting us 16. So that's how we get by hand those exact same 2 answers that we got from the graph. But the thing to remember is the vocabulary could change. So you have to know that zeros, roots, solutions, x-intercepts all mean that you're looking for on a graph where the graph touches the x-axis. Now, right here, we've got a very different situation going on. This is a quadratic, number 2. And the reason that this is a quadratic, and so is number 1, all right, if you want a reminder, Unit 3 was all about quadratics. So that means that the highest power was a 2, a squared power. So number 1 had 3x squared. Number 2 has 7a squared. But the quadratic is that highest power of 2. We always need to have it set equal to 0. So 7a squared, I'm going to subtract 7. And I'm going to add 40a. Add 40a. So 7a squared plus 40a, and then 32 minus 7 gets me 25 equals 0. So this is a quadratic in the classic quadratic form. Let me go ahead and pull up a little note page over here. Just a quick reminder, when it comes to quadratics, ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. A, b, and c are your coefficients. And then we can solve for x by graphing. We can solve by factoring. We can solve with square roots. Or we can solve with the quadratic formula. Square roots is what we did in number 1. I think we also did graphing in number 1. And then I'm going to probably go ahead and try factoring in number 2. But just in case it doesn't work, here's the quadratic formula if we need to use it. X equals -b plus and minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. If you ever need to use this, it should be on the formula sheet in your test or in your exam. But I'm gonna put this off to the side. I'll pull it back up if I need it. So for number 2, I'm going to go ahead and get some scrap paper, and I'm going to try to factor number 2. So we had 7a squared plus 40a plus 25 equals 0. So to factor this, I'm going to use slide and divide. So I'm going to slide the 7 over to the 25. 7 times 25, let's see, if I have 7 quarters, I have $1.75. Whenever I think of 25s, I count it up in quarters. 75 is 175, 1 and 75. Can't do 2, can't do 3, can't do 4, I can do 5, and I'm trying to come up with numbers that multiply to 175. So 175 divided by 5, 35. Oh, that'll work. Because these two numbers add up to 40. So 7a squared plus 5a plus 35a plus 25. Sorry, I changed my mind. I was doing slide and divide. I changed it to grouping. So it starts the same, but instead I just have the 5 and 35 set up there in the middle. If you want to see slide and divide would be a squared plus 40a plus 175, and then a plus 5, a plus 35, and then divide the 7, and then 7a plus 5, because that doesn't reduce, and a plus 5. So that's how slide and divide would work. Over here, I'm doing grouping. So I'm taking out common terms, a, 7a plus 5. These two can both divide by 5. So plus 5, 7a plus 5. They both have 7a plus 5. So that comes out, and it leaves behind a plus 5. So both of these factored, but they are not solved yet. So to solve both of these problems, and it's the same problem, so you don't have to write them twice anymore. You take each factor and you set it equal to 0. So 7a plus 5 equals 0, a plus 5 equals 0. Subtract the 5. Divide the 7. A equals negative 5 over 7. Subtract the 5. A equals negative 5. There are my two answers. Now, yes, you can probably still check this with Desmos. All right, so I'm just going to type in 7x squared. All right, I'm using x instead of a here. Plus 40x plus 25. And there are my two answers. So I've got the negative 5, which is great. But if I look at negative 0.714, I don't know exactly what that is. However, that one doesn't really work well if you try to round it to a fraction in Desmos, probably because this was rounded. So that might be one of the instances where you want to check it by plugging it in. So at least you get one of the two answers. The other answer looks like you did need to get by hand using factoring, and you would have gotten that same answer if you'd used the quadratic formula. All right, last one I'm going to do on this video is number 3. Make a quadratic function. So again, we're looking for ax squared plus bx plus c. So all I'm going to do is take these zeros and make them factors. X plus 2/5, x minus 3. We don't like denominators, we don't like fractions here, so we take that 5 and we put it on the front. 5x plus 2 times x minus 3. And then finally, to get it to this form, we have to multiply these factors out. So I'm just going to double distribute or FOIL, whatever you want to call it. 5x squared minus 15x plus 2x minus 6. And there's my final answer, 5x squared minus 13x minus 6. All right, I'm going to call it there and give you a video break.